they're being built. And a couple of them, actually, their back windows are into our backyard. I don't know how they feel about it, but.
Pretty soon, we should be through about every potential landscape plan for every place here in Farragut.
Right. Yep, I'll start running out of land.
So we'll reject that first.
That?
Nothing. Oh. Well. A year goes fast nowadays.
Well, I didn't. So what they've done. But I still don't get it, deal. They just use the spot. I think every Kansas thing already. See, they took the.
Are you expecting anybody else to show up for the cottages? Just gonna be you? Okay. All right, well, looks like it's 7. Yep. All right, we'll go ahead and call to order the, now the December meeting of the Visual Resources Review Board for the town of Farragut. The first item on our agenda tonight is to approve the minutes from the October 27th, 2015 meeting. Is there any discussion on the minutes from October?
I need to abstain. I know that because I wasn't here.
Okay. All right, if there's no further discussion, do we have a motion?
Okay, I move to approve the minutes.
A second.
Motion is second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hey, we didn't have any wall signs for the last little bit, so we'll move on down. If it's all right, let's go ahead and move to the end of our agenda, the cottages at Priest Farms, because we have someone in here for that one, and we'll go ahead and do that one first. This is for a landscaping plan.
Let me get to that one here. Okay. This is the subdivision that's under construction. Part of it's under construction just to the north of McPhee Park off McPhee Road. I'm sure y'all familiar with this property. Recently, the phases 2 and 3 have been approved by the Planning Commission, and it's basically the southeastern portion. Let me see if I can highlight this. It's pretty. Basically all of this portion there, along with some landscaping along McPhee Road itself. That's what we're looking at tonight, and I'll be up front on the, most of this landscaping is not even required. First of all, the developer and the landscape architect had put this together, and I know that having discussed the plant material with some of the representatives of the homeowners association and the developer and the landscape architect, and I'm just going to scroll through some pages of this. We're all receptive to, there's a desire to thin out the amount of plant material because ultimately, most of this falls on open space areas that the homeowners association are going to be responsible for maintaining. And in this particular development, it's zoned open space residential, but it does not have a required buffer strip. So the plant material along the periphery, most of that's not, it's not required by the town. It's certainly, we'd love to see all of that planted, of course, but we can only, ask them to do what's required. One of the things that the staff has pointed out to really everyone we've talked to is we would like to see the rain gardens and the boulevard plantings continued, basically, consistent and compatible with what's been planted in phase one. That way it gives it some visual continuity as you go through the subdivision. As far as the plant material on the periphery, basically, these areas, some of these areas probably could all be thinned out, pretty substantially, but the areas that, they probably should continue as designed would be in the boulevard and, potentially at your gateways to the property, the entrance areas, and then along McPhee Road to give some separation between people that, have houses that back up to McPhee Road, and to also give the walking trail through there some shade over time. That's a pretty open, for any of y'all who have walked on that or run on it, biked on it, it's pretty exposed. I mean, there's not much shade out there, so anything that they could do to help enhance the tree cover along that walking trail and also provide more buffering for the residents in there, I think would be areas where I wouldn't recommend them thinning out any plant material. Let me see if I can scroll to the next page. Be more. These are kind of some, more detailed scale. This shows basically the northeast corner of the development, and you can see the rain garden area. This is the boulevard of the street where we're recommending that they basically, continue a pretty heavy planting there. All of this plant material, in this area and around these houses is not really required by our ordinances. That's really up to, the developer and the homeowners. What we do typically look at with this body would be the plant material in the rights of ways, like I pointed out earlier, and then that material that might be on open space areas. There's a lot of walking trails in these two phases, and those will have, these are the walking trails that are kind of, this is just for this one little section. They've got over a mile of new walking trails just in this area. So it's pretty substantial. But a lot of this plant material, for example, this area, probably could be omitted as far as the staff's concerned. We'd certainly like to see it, but it's really up to the developer and the homeowners association as to whether, they would want that long term. It could provide them some buffering depending on what could be developed around them at some future date. So there is some benefit in that regard. But again, it would be something for some maintenance, and the homeowners association would be incurring that responsibility. And then some of the areas down, there's a large sinkhole kind of in the middle of the property. This is will be a private gravel trail that the homeowners association will maintain. And then there's a lot of plant material that's shown in this area, that could be thinned out as well. You know, it's not, again, it's not really required. It would be nice to, and I think what they're trying to do is to add some interest and buffering and color to that sinkhole area, and I think that's a good goal. But again, a lot of these areas could certainly, at least from the staff's perspective, be thinned out a little bit. We'll go down to the next.
Mark, when you're saying thinned out, a lot of them I noticed are white pines, so when you say thinned out, are you talking specifically certain?
Well, I think it's really up to the designer and the homeowners. You know, white pines obviously are used because they're inexpensive for the most part. They're not, in my opinion, they're not a particularly great tree in a suburban setting, but they're inexpensive. You could probably plant one for $25. So, you know, this area, there's a lot of things going on with this property. As you can see, they're planting a virtual forest out here, which is good. That's fine. I would probably, if I was, you know, advising the developer, and I'd probably thin that out a little bit, and probably thin out some of the stuff along the periphery, but then try to keep the right-of-way and the rain garden areas. Here's a rain garden area. This is kind of an area where they probably ought to keep the landscaping pretty significant. So that's, you know, kind of a summary of what is going on in this particular development. One area that they don't really show on their sheets, and it was one of Ashley's comments, is that they needed to show the plantings that would actually be along McPhee Road, because I do think those would be of value to the development and to the residents out there and the town, frankly. Let's see if I can go back to that. Yep, now that's more. I'm going to try to go back to that very first picture. What we were asking them to show were the plantings that they show there, but there's not actually a detail sheet on them. Just to make sure that what they're proposing wouldn't create any conflicts with overhead or underground utilities, site visibilities you're pulling out of the cottages. So those kinds of things. I mean, the plan itself, you were emailed just the 4 comments that we had at the staff level. The first one I just mentioned was including the planting along McPhee Road. The second one I just talked about was consider thinning out the plantings, you know, where it wouldn't compromise the design. And certainly I think the designer is, you know, knows where the plant material would provide the most bang for the buck. There's a couple of invasive exotics that they do show on the landscape plan. Those are actually shown to be around houses, but they probably should be omitted from the plan. Burning bush and spirea, I know I've seen in the mountains, burning bush deep in the woods where you're wondering how in the world it got there, but they are pretty invasive. And then just making sure that the landscape plan is consistent, in this case, with any modifications that may be made to the plats, which there won't be any that would affect the landscaping, but that's kind of a general comment. I've got the full-size sheets over here as well if anybody wants to look at that. I think Clark Brecky is here. He's with the homeowners association, and he could probably speak to their, you know, whatever they want to share with you all about the landscaping. But if you do speak, Clark, if you could go over there to the podium, that would be good.
My name is Clark Brecky. I'm president of the Homeowners Association for cottages at Price Farm. I reviewed the plans yesterday along with another member of the board, and I sent an email to Mark with my comments. Are mine the only ones you received?
I have one other individual.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Mark has done a good job of explaining some of our concerns, which were not many. However, there is one that I would like to bring up and for your knowledge, if nothing else. Mark, would you please put up on the screen one that shows the stone and bark chips in the new rain gardens?
Yeah, let's see if I've got that.
It's towards the end. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
As Mark said, this is a continuation of the design of the current Phase 1 rain gardens. And I just want to express the concern that if you look carefully at that plan, down the middle is stone, and on the sides are pine bark nuggets. And we have had trouble in the current rain garden because we do not have curbs. Everything runs into the rain garden. And of course, there are low spots, and where there are low spots, more water runs down there than it does elsewhere along the road. And what happens is that at first you get channeling of the bark chips, and then you get total wash of the bark chips. It washes into the stones, which creates a visual problem, but more than that, it provides soil and organic matter for grass and weeds to occur, which is a maintenance cost. In addition to that, we have twice had to replace bark chips that washed, once we found out where those areas were, with river rock. And then that was additional expense to the homeowners association. Now, I don't know why, but I'll just pass this on. Because of the rain we've been having, at the end of each one of those rain gardens, there are islands. There is a drain on the downhill side. And those drains, there's grates in a drain. Those grates have been removed. And I suspect it's because of grass seed spreading. There's been straw that's covered. And I think that the straw probably was plugging up those grates so the water would not go down. My concern is the same thing is going to happen if those bark chips wash. And so what I guess I'm expressing is a desire that the contractor put in more river rock up the sides. Those sides are very steep. I think they're steeper even than the current rain garden. And I don't see any way that some of that will not wash out and will be an additional cost to the homeowners association to replace the washed bark with river rock. Thank you.
Thank you, Clark.
From my perspective on the river rock, and I kind of came in reviewing this plan after the fact, but the river rock is an environmental concern from my perspective, because oftentimes it's harvested out of creeks and rivers that is not a very good practice, really. So I don't really like to see river rock used at all. But I'm thinking if there might be a way to get a vegetated cover on that slope more, and maybe use some river rock for accent or large stones just to give it some visual interest. But he's showing a lot of St. John's wort basically is, and Larapi is his ground cover. I'm not sure if he might be able to extend that, you know, in there, or maybe even incorporate some other vegetative solutions like some fragrant sumac or something that would basically take over, you know, and it would also provide for more of a rooted structure for the slopes, and that would help stabilize them as well. So I almost would think they'd be better off to lessen the amount of river rock and put in some kind of material that would have a rooted, you know, some kind of root system to it, because I think that would actually help with those slopes more than if you put the rocks in there. And I agree with you about the mulch. The mulch is never a good idea on a slope. They probably need to just really heavily plant those slopes, would be what I would recommend.
The first one has already been done in River Rock, right?
Yeah, like I say, they would need to probably
They would have to
continue
make-
some of that,
Yeah,
just
but
to
not
give it
as
some
much as-
continuity and interest. But they probably should probably lessen the amount. I think that could be
They possibly, or would they possibly go back and kind of make sort of the other one match, the one that they, replaced, you know, the entrance with, that's the one that you're talking about that you replaced with the River Rock, right?
yeah, I guess you might want to sit over there.
I think he's saying that the homeowners association are placed in the phase one,
Right.
which is
But I'm
not
just
what they're
wondering-
working on
Right.
now, so.
I know it,
It's
but
in,
I just was wondering.
I
if
will say this, the
want to
slopes
make
in
them
the rain gardens in phase one are probably steeper than what they will be in these phases.
Oh, it
so
will
that's-
be?
Yeah.
They're higher, but I don't know that they're any
Steeper.
less steep or any more steep. I need to correct something that was just said. The developer paid the first time that we had to replace the
Okay.
bark chips, and the association paid the second time.
I just
And-
was hoping maybe that they would be consistent, and if you were gonna do more plants in this phase, that maybe they could add the
Oh.
same plants into the other, but they probably
I
wouldn't.
think they probably could just, yeah, they'll probably need to extend some river rock to these new areas. But we may need to just have a meeting out there with the landscape architect, and you all, the developer, and just look at the slopes, see if, first of all, we need to get the slopes to where they're not super steep. That's the first thing, because if your slopes are that steep, that's really the problem.
I'm not sure how you would rectify that now that you have the curb, the apron
Yeah.
and the roads in. There's no way to make it wider without tearing up
Yeah, that's true.
in place item. And
No.
I also want to ask you, Mark, with the additional plants and asking having roots hold the soil, I understand that, but I think the trick is you've got to get rid of the bark chips because the roots do not hold the bark chips. The bark chips are on the surface.
They
I feel like the
run.
bark chips just need to go away. It needs to be either
Totally.
more stone, and if we're opposed to stone, at least more ground cover.
Probably mat it with the plant units within the matting. And once they, let those just kind of grow and take over, and you wouldn't have much need for mulch. You know, 'cause the idea is to get that in a vegetated cover, you know.
How long would
That'll
that
take a
take?
little bit of time, because it don't
Yeah.
just happen overnight, but the, well, we would probably need to mat the slopes and plug the plants in the matting. I don't know, we'd need to probably look at that, and, you know, I think the solution though is to get more green cover on those slopes, not add more rock, or certainly not mulch. I agree with you that
Mulch just needs to go away.
mulch on slopes is just gonna be a constant maintenance problem.
Correct.
So, yeah, that would definitely not be the solution.
Constant cost for the
Correct.
homeowners. Yep.
And those rocks, you know, they require a lot of maintenance too, really, over time, because what happens is in those areas and on those type slopes, they start filling in with sediment. Then you gotta go in there and clean out around the rocks to make it look right, because eventually it'll basically cover them.
The sediment ends up in the bottom of the ditch.
Yes,
And that's
right.
where the weeds grow. And the sides where there are rock tend not to support plant growth. And so the secret is, or the answer is, you've got to stop organic matter from washing into the bottom of the drain system, whether it's by planting or rocks or whatever. And I just bring this up as a concern. I have no knowledge at all how to solve the problem.
Now, the concern of weeds too, I mean, if you put ground cover on there, you're still gonna have weeds, and you
Oh,
can't
yeah,
just spray it
yeah.
out like you can rocks.
Yeah.
River rock, you can just spray over them, but with
Yeah, that's true.
ground cover, you're gonna have to weed all of those.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the goal is to get the desired ground cover to basically cover it. So you'd probably, on the ground cover, you may actually want to intensify the spacing of plant material. And maybe if you're looking to reduce plant units elsewhere, you could remove some trees and things in other locations. But you probably
Well,
want to plant those ground covers, you know, whether it's St. John's wort or ripey or whatever you end up using. And those are both good choices. Neither one are native, but they're decent choices.
I would gladly accept your invitation of taking a look out there
Yeah.
with the developer and maybe the landscape architect.
Yeah, I think
and
that
talking
would
about
be, yeah, in those areas in particular, we need to figure out something that's not going to just continue to exacerbate this problem. You know, we have control over it right now because nothing's happened. So now's the time to really get a good plan in
Agreed.
place and think about it. So I would be happy to do that. I think having the actual woody material in those boulevards is very good, and I wouldn't thin that out, because that, again, is going to be the best thing to hold those slopes. You know, the ground cover is not going to hold it nearly as well as the trees and shrubs will. So they actually can help you with stabilizing those slopes and, you know, providing less subsidence and less maintenance over time. So I think we just need to revisit how the mulch, the river rock, and the ground material, you know, those are the things that we really need to get on board with, I think, get on the same page.
Right, so Mark, if I can sort of summarize and get all of this straight, a lot of stuff going on here.
Yeah, there is.
So what we're saying is that they meet the town requirements as far as the plant
Yeah.
material that's on this proposal.
Yes, they,
However, there are some invasive exotic that should be removed.
yes.
There's more plant material than is required. So
Way
things
more.
like a white pine can be removed.
There's way more plant material than is required.
So thin those areas with those specific types of products or plant material coming out. Then along McPhee Road, identify the plant material that's there. And then with the rain gardens, recommend a meeting between town staff, the developer, and the homeowners association to discuss the bark,
Slopes and
chips,
the-
and
yeah.
mulch and all the flow
Yeah,
of how that goes.
now that sounds,
Lighting that you have on this either. You have the light, oh, never mind, sorry. Okay, never mind.
Does that pretty much cover everything? Is everybody,
yeah, from my perspective, I think that's,
that pretty much cover everything, Clark? Okay. Is there Any other thoughts from the board or discussion on it? All right. We need to have a motion then. I'll make the motion to accept, subject to all those things that I just said, which I hope you have written down there. With that, do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right. First and second, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Thank you very much, Clark. I'm not sure.
Okay, so we're going to thin that. Let me make a couple of notes here. Second, thin out.
Okay. And we'll go back to the beginning too when you get finished, Mark.
Sure, the developer'd like to get out of the river rock too. It's very expensive.
All right, so back to the ground-mounted signs. The first one on the agenda then is the voice tank, 11,000 Kingston Pike, Suite 2.
Okay. This tenant panel is at the Concord Square. As you can see, that's the Pittsburgh Paints development. It is very legible and consistent with the other panels, and staff recommends approval. I'm not sure what the voice tank is, but I think Ashley knew either. I asked her the same thing. Maybe it's some kind of broadcasting training. I don't know. I'm not sure what it is.
Looks very legible.
So is Edwards Jones going to leave that? I mean, was that not?
I don't know. I haven't. Edward Jones is actually in the building in the back, the one that's. Yeah, I noticed that too. Those two signs don't really jive, but.
So there has to be, am I not mistaken, is there going to be two added like that other one too?
Yeah,
Voice tank?
looks like Edward Jones is going away. Yeah. Yeah.
Aren't there two places on the bottom?
I guess there's room for.
Yes.
Yeah, there are two on the bottom, yeah. They maybe just didn't, modify. They just wanted to show, I guess,
Right, that it was going to be,
the one that was being requested for approval. I'm not sure whether the other ones are, what's happening with the other ones other than the ones that we're looking at tonight. There is room to add two more new ones, though, at the bottom. Anybody have any comments on that one? Yeah, on the voice tank first.
Is there any other discussion on the voice tank? All right, do we have a motion? Do we have a second? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so the next one is painting with a twist. It's like pretty much the same.
Pretty much the same, yep.
thing, so
Looks good.
any more discussion on painting with a twist? We have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Have a second? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, so we're at DaVita Dialysis, which we tabled, I guess, at the last meeting.
Yeah, I talked with Ashley about that one. And basically, I think that one just needs to be, that won't be back before you until they submit all the information that they need in order to have a complete application. So we're still waiting on some items. So I think the way it was presented last month was that it would come back to you this time, but we would just recommend that it be left, that it'll come back to you whenever it's ready from this point forward.
Right, so we need a motion to remove that item from the agenda until the requirements are met.
Yeah, that would be the appropriate, yeah.
Well, I'll go ahead and make that motion then.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so the landscape application for Split Rail Farm Subdivision Pavilion.
Okay, Split Rail is, used to be Everett Hills off of Everett Road. They have an open space lot where they are proposing to build a pavilion. And this is the landscape plan for that project. The only remaining comment that the staff had on the landscape plan was that it just be consistent with any modifications that might happen to the site plan. The site plan is going to the Planning Commission on the 17th of this month, so it should be approved by the Planning Commission. And the landscape plan is very good, very heavy amount of landscaping that far exceeds the requirement. I don't know if you can see the, probably can see the pavilion and all that.
Yeah. Is the entrance into the parking lot of the pavilion, that's coming off of the neighborhood, a neighborhood road?
Yeah, yeah,
So-
split
There's-
rail farm lane, I think's what it's called. This
Yeah.
is the road. And
There's
this
no-
basically becomes a big roundabout over here.
So there's nothing in here that's invasive exotic that anybody has seen that we need to?
No. He revised, he made the revisions from the staff's initial comments.
All right, do we have any discussion on the landscape plan for Split Rail Farms? If not, do we have a motion for approval?
I move that this plan be approved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, so the next landscaping plan on the agenda is the McKinley Station subdivision off Everett Road.
This landscape plan, this is, as Marty mentioned, this is another development off Everett Road. This is further south off Everett Road, near where Smith Road comes into Everett Road, almost across on the west side of Everett Road from that intersection. Part of it backs up to Fox Run, but it's basically a loop subdivision that loops in and around from Everett Road. And this is just a landscape plan for the detention basin, which is actually on the southeast corner of the development. This is the actual subdivision. This is the road for the subdivision, and this is Everett Road. And the detention basin is over here in the southeast portion of the development. The development will have, let's see, it's got a little walking trail, a couple of walking trail sections. One will be through there, and the other one is here. And of course, I'm not sure how familiar you all are with the Everett Road improvement that the town is doing right now, but there'll be 8-foot walking trails along both sides of that road for most of it. So it's going to be very nice. There will be a sidewalk on one side up to, I think, Smith Road, but then the remainder of that corridor will be walking trail on both sides. So that will, tie in nicely with that system that'll be built on Everett Road. It's kind of hard to envision that right now because it's all torn up, but
Trying to figure out where that is, Mark. I know where you turn to go on Everett Road. Where is it from there?
you would go past, where Smith comes down. You got the church. Smith comes into Everett. It's just past that, probably an eighth of a mile on the west side of Everett. Left, if you're going north.
It's between Fox Run and Split Rail.
It's south of Split Rail. Well south of Split Rail. It's probably eighth of a mile or more.
So
quarter
the
mile.
houses on the Smith Road side of Fox Run would see that? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, part of those will back up to that. It's actually it used to be Mr. Montgomery's property, part of it. So some of, it's hard to, I think the Fox Run portion would back up to part of this, that area. These are some of the Fox Run lots through there, and I think this is Mr. Montgomery's over here. It's an open space residential subdivision, so it does have a pretty good buffer of open space around the periphery of it to provide for more separation between it and Fox Run, because there is the creek that runs through there along that section. You got the creek that basically comes through like that, and so a lot of that open space includes areas along, a buffer off of that creek area, the little Turkey Creek. So, but
Problem, I know those are the little whirly birds that if you're,
what? Well, we asked them to change pin oak.
Yeah, 'cause that's so, what's he gonna change it to?
He changed it to red oak. I'm not really sure. Red oak's fine, but I think some. No, probably, normally, if you're going to do an oak, probably the least messy would be the willow oak,
Yeah.
as its leaves are so small. It's kind of overused and it's not particularly colorful, but Shumard oak or something like that's good. They're good trees. So it's what we planted out here.
Okay, But
It's
definitely not
it's a
pin oak.
type of red oak.
that would be pretty.
But all he's specified currently is just red oak.
Okay,
It-
so there's, on that sheets where I saw at the bottom, it says pin oaks, 9 of them, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, we asked him to substitute that because pin oaks do have some
It's gonna substitute it then?
issues. Yeah, he did
And
with the red
So
oak.
did he, okay, so he's not gonna do the ones that you'd suggested out here? The oaks that,
Oh, Shumard, I don't know. I haven't. I'm not sure why they couldn't. Actually, I don't think
That would give
red
more
oak,
color,
pure
wouldn't
red oak is really not used that often anymore. I'm not really sure why he spec'd that.
Because these would give more color, right?
They would, yeah, they would give, this is the plant list for that. That's the original one. There was 9 pin oaks, like you said. Southern magnolia is another questionable one to me for the detention basin. It's extremely messy.
Exactly. I love them, but they're, yeah.
Red bud is okay once it gets going, but yeah, I think any of the Shumard or Nuttall oak, if you're going to use oak, it'd probably be better choices. Overcup oak. Those are, but he's just showing red oaks what he has on the latest plan. But I think they would be fine with Shumard or Nuttall, some
So are you
type
gonna
of
talk
oak
to him
like that.
again, or, about?
Yeah, I can talk with Mike Burson about that.
So they are definitely gone,
The pin oak's definitely gone, yeah. The pin oak has problems with the chlorosis, and it has problems with insects. We have to deal with ours quite a bit out here. Now they do hold their leaves most of the winter. I guess that may or may not be an advantage. But I think there's other oaks that would be a lot better if you're going to use oak trees. But yeah, other than that, we would recommend approval of this plan for the detention basin.
All right, is there any further discussion on this one? Do we have a motion?
I move, go ahead. Okay, I move that this plan be approved.
All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
I'll just put down here, consider using, Shumard or Nettle Oak or something like that.
What's a gator bag water system?
It's those little green bags that
Oh,
get around.
yeah, okay.
All right, is there anything else tonight, Mark?
I guess that is it, isn't it? Yeah, I do have, if any of y'all wanted to see it, I think Ashley mentioned that she would have this for you. That's the revised plan for the Dr. Hughes project on
Okay.
Kingston Pike. If anybody wants to look at that, I've got it here.
Also the breakfast.
Yeah, we should be, hopefully you'll be getting a notice about the
Get him, Mr. Chair?
breakfast. Yeah,
Tell them ahead of time.
December
Just in case we
17th.
forgot.
It's supposed to be December 17th at 7:30 in the community room, I'm sure.
All right, well, if that's it, we'll
Think
end
that
this month's
is-
meeting, and we'll see everybody in January.
Yep, y'all have a
Oh,
good
so this
Christmas.
year, where has it gone?
Christmas, that's right.
Merry
Happy
Christmas
New
to
Year.
everybody.
I normally have something for you, but it's too early, so, oh well.
Feels different,
See you
doesn't it?
next year.
I did see the